Anyone who believes in indefinite growth on a physically finite planet is either mad or an economist.
We don't want to focus politics on a notion that involves the rejection of principles around which a large majority of our fellow citizens organize their lives.
We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think.
To the women of the world, from the women delegates and advisors at the First Assembly of the United Nations.
It is important to consider the prevalence of violence within society.
The message to the women of the world is, arise.
The women's movement is a political movement.
Human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights once and for all.
We are all witnessing a historic moment, a moment characterized by unprecedented solidarity.
Today, you have adopted a landmark resolution. We have decided to establish UN Women. Now it is time that United Nations leads this campaign so that we can make a world better for all, where men and women can work together.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends and supporters, on behalf of UN Women in the UK, I'm delighted to welcome you to tonight's historic event at the RSA. We have come a long way along the road towards gender equality, as you will have seen from the film. We know, however, that even in the UK, it's a developed country, there is evidence of the inequality of women which is prevalent and needs addressing at all levels of society. And we hope to impact this through education, awareness raising, and support programs. We are at an historic moment. As UN Women, the new UN Agency for Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment is launched tonight in the UK by the Under-Secretary-General, Michelle Bachelet, head of the new agency, UN Women. As the organisation's UK representative, voice and champion, we are proud to be hosting this event and pleased that you have all joined us to share in this moment. I would now like to introduce Jane Martinson, the well-respected women's editor of The Guardian newspaper, who will comment on the importance of universal support for UN Women and its work.
I've been asked to talk about the importance of UN Women, but first I'd like to share some random statistics, because I think after you see videos like this, sometimes statistics help. In the Congo, a report last week found that there were 48 rapes every hour, which is roughly one every second, every minute, in a population the same size as the UK. Rape and sexual violence is increasingly being used as a weapon in war zones. In the US, violence against women is estimated to cost some $6 billion a year. In southern Sudan, a girl is more likely to die in childbirth than she is to finish her primary education. In the UK, where we think we have it so good, nearly half of all FTSE 250 companies have no women whatsoever in the boardroom, and we can count the number of female CEOs of the leading 100 companies on the fingers of one hand. Around the world, women make up just 19% of all national parliaments. I think when we're looking at reasons for why we need a department dedicated to improving gender equality and empowering women around the world, these statistics help give us reason for supporting such a venture. But with so many competing demands on ever tighter budgets, it's important not only to believe that it's the right thing to do, because there are so many right things to do in our world, but also that it's a sensible and cost-effective thing to do. It was 6 years ago that the then Secretary-General Kofi Annan said that study after study has taught us that there's no tool for development more effective than empowerment of women. And just to see what that means, it's been proven to raise economic productivity, to reduce infant and maternal mortality, and to improve health generally, including the prevention of HIV/AIDS. All these things and many more in studies that he pointed to, that I have no time to go into now, could help make the world a safer place. Yet despite these statistics, there has been foot-dragging amongst international governments since UN Women was founded last year, including our own. With so much to do, UN Women need to prioritise in a world of many inequalities, but they must be given the financial firepower to do so. Just after International Women's Day, which is the 100th anniversary, as I'm sure many of you know this March, I interviewed Madame Bachelet, I'm very pleased to say, in New York. But I discovered in this interview that the new offices of UN Women were in the Daily News building, the iconic building in New York, which is otherwise known as the home of Superman. I made a joke at the time about the powers needed, but seeing everybody here in this beautiful room tonight, I feel more hopeful that Madame Bachelet, as the new head of UN Women, will not need to be superhuman to make the changes that the world needs, but just a great woman.
Around the world, millions of women face daily discrimination and violence just because they're women. VSO has volunteers working in some of the most disadvantaged communities, and they see for themselves the scale of the challenges that women face.
মোটরসাইকেল ঘোরায় রেখেছে আর ও পিছনে হাত বেঁধে আমার ওখানে চলে গেছে এই বলে আমি আর নড়িনিও কানতে ও আসলে আমার সামনে গিয়ে যে দাঁড়িয়েছে সেই আমি চোখ তুলি তাকাতে আমাকে মেরে
There are hundreds and hundreds of acid survivors around the country, like Nurban, who are in such a delicate position. There is no support for women in general. The systems which need to change can only be changed by central government, and they will not give priority to women's issues. And this is why the UN Women has to be established. They have to be able to have some political representation in the UN to put pressure on all countries who are violating women's rights.
In 2008, we joined the global campaign for the creation of a new UN Women's Agency. Our Godmothers campaign has mobilised thousands of people across the UK behind UN Women.
I'm here today with 150 other Godmothers to go into Parliament and lobby this cause and get them to listen and hopefully decide that they want to support it.
I'm here with my mum today. We've come all the way from the West Midlands, come down specially from Oswald Twizzle up in East Lancashire to speak to my MP.
I'm here for my first ever mass lobby of Parliament with UN Women to try and do some good today.
It's really important that everyone comes out to convince government that UN Women is just a really good investment and really important for them to get involved.
I very much support the Godmothers campaign to promote the interests of women and end discrimination against them.
Women are still lagging behind when it comes to health, education, politics and employment, and that's why we need a really powerful agency to make sure we're putting women at the heart of the development.
I strongly back the Godmother campaign to support UN Women and end discrimination against women and girls around the world.
I'm proud to pledge my strong support for the organisation and hope that it will play a major part in advancing the cause of women across the globe, whether in business, in all forms of development.
It's really important that women should be involved in the democratic process, not just so that a woman's voice can be heard, but also so that women are well placed to take up ministerial positions and other positions of power and influence.
Now the hard work begins. UN Women is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Its success is our responsibility.
I feel so strongly that the new agency, UN Women, needs to have the money in order to do its job properly.
The funding of UN Women is an issue which really should speak across party boundaries, speak across gender boundaries.
I still see the Godmothers as a sort of women's mafia who are telling the politicians, we're going to make you an offer that
you can't possibly refuse, which is to help the world's women. I think we've got to get a bit tough on this.
I'm very pleased to be able to be here this evening, and I'm delighted that so many of you are able to be here to celebrate the launch of UN Women, and as we've seen from the film, how necessary this organisation is. But I think it's also appropriate that we're actually here for the launch at the Royal Society of Arts, which is an organisation which actually has a long history of supporting women's rights. Indeed, in 1872, the Society launched a campaign to improve girls' education, so that poor girls would not be denied the opportunities afforded to more fortunate boys. Nearly 150 years later, many countries around the world have had women leaders, including, of course, the UK and Chile, where our distinguished guest, Michelle Bachelet, was the first woman to be elected president. So it's clear that many countries have come an awfully long way, but it's equally clear that many other countries have an awfully long way to go. Women still face the greatest share of the world's development challenges. Almost 2/3 of those who cannot read or write are women. Less than 40% of those in paid employment are women. Women are paid less and they have less secure jobs than men. And in conflict zones, and even more disturbingly, often in their own homes, many women are still subjected to systematic violence. What the RSA realised in the 19th century is equally true today. Improving the lives of women and girls is right. It's right economically, it's right socially, and it's right morally. And in development, there are few better options than investing in women. In the Ivory Coast, for example, an increase of just $10 in women's income achieves the same nutritional and health outcomes for children as an increase of $110 in men's income. That's because women spend resources in ways that benefit future generations. And better educated girls and women earn more and have healthier children. Providing girls with an extra year of schooling can increase their wages by 10 to 20%. And in Africa, children of mothers who've received 5 years of primary education are 40% more likely to live beyond the age of 5. So that's why the UK has put girls and women at the centre of our development efforts. It's why we've been such strong advocates of concerted international action to support women, and it's why we've been vocal supporters of UN Women. We worked hard to help establish the agency, and I want us to continue to work closely with UN Women. I see Michelle's visit as a good opportunity to discuss how exactly we can work together to improve the lives of women and girls in the country and around the world. And I also see it as an opportunity to consider how best we can engage with the many voluntary organisations and charities that do such tremendous work for women and who I know have lobbied hard for the creation of UN Women. I think it's heartening that UN Women's priorities closely mirror our own domestic policy agenda and our priorities in international development. They include economic empowerment, political participation, and preventing violence against women and girls. In the UK, we have a comprehensive programme to address each of these issues. On the economic side, just this morning I launched a consultation on modern workplaces. This includes plans to increase the right to request flexible working for all, helping to shift behaviour away from the traditional 9-to-5 model of work that can act as a barrier to so many people and that often doesn't make sense for many modern businesses. The consultation also includes plans for a new system of flexible parental leave, which will allow parents to make the right choices for their family, and it will help end the state-endorsed stereotype of women doing the caring and men earning the money when a couple start a family. So if fathers want to take more of a role, they can. If mothers want to return to work earlier, they can. If parents want some time at home together at the birth of their child, they can. What matters is that they will have a choice. On the political side, the UK has made great strides. We now have more women MPs than ever before, we have more women ethnic minority MPs than ever before, and we have the first Muslim woman to serve in the cabinet. And I know from the work I did to increase the number of women candidates that we can achieve change without resorting to quotas or positive discrimination. But even though we now have the most diverse parliament in our history, it is clear that Britain still has a long way to go. Tackling violence against women and girls, finally, is a key priority for me and for this government. And in March, that's why we published an action plan on tackling violence against women and girls. It's why we've provided over £28 million of stable Home Office funding until 2015 for local specialist services. It's why we've provided £900,000 until 2015 to support national helplines. And it's why we've implemented legislation for multi-agency domestic homicide reviews after every domestic murder. And I know my ministerial colleague at the Home Office, Lynn Featherstone, will be engaging actively and closely with UN Women in her role as overseas champion for tackling violence against women and girls. The mandate of UN Women gives it the authority to make a real difference, and it gives UN Women a real chance to hold the international system to account. But most of all, it was crucial that UN Women had a strong leader with the vision to make sure it has a real impact, and Michelle will be that leader. I share her vision for the agency. We want to see UN Women getting things done on the ground with a clear focus on delivery of the Millennium Development Goals. It also has a key role to play in advocacy, in ensuring the UN system delivers a more effective gender response. And that's why we have provided transitional funding to support Michelle and her team as they get started on this important agenda. And we look forward to contributing to the funding of UN Women's strategic plan once it's been adopted by the Executive Board in the coming weeks. So as a government, we will support organisations that can deliver results and make a real impact on people's lives. UN Women can be that type of organisation, and it's my very great pleasure now to invite to the stage to speak to you the leader of that organisation who will drive that change forward, Michelle Bachelet.
It's really a joy and an honour for me to join you in this UK celebration of UN Women. Many of you have worked for years to bring UN Women into being, to realize the dreams of millions of women and girls, to have a global champion at the United Nations who can lead the global efforts to accelerate progress on gender equality. It would have never happened without you. And I want to thank all of the many people here today in government, in parliament, in civil society, and of course in the private sector for your tireless advocacy in support of UN Women. And I especially want to thank the UK National Committee for UN Women and President Jan Grasky for organizing this event tonight, as well for your ongoing support. I have to tell you that the UK National Committee has been our long-standing partner as we work to advance gender equality and women's empowerment worldwide. Its role in coordinating the UK NGO participation at the Commission of Status of Women in February this year has helped to increase support and visibility for UN Women at, if I would say, critical time. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the decision to establish UN Women, I think, reflects something very important. Reflects, on one hand, global concern with the slow pace of change, as well as a recognition that we can do better. And Jane Martinson and the minister had already mentioned a lot of figures explaining the situation of women, how they are victims of so many terrible situations, how the precarious condition in many parts of the world, how much is needed to be done. And I think the failure to achieve gender equality means the social and economic potential of half of the population is underused. And in order to tap this potential, we must open up spaces for women in political leadership, but also in science, in technology, as trade, as peace negotiators, and of course, as head of corporations. Because even though I believe that women have been victims of many terrible situations, I see women essentially as agents of change, as people who can contribute to build better societies, be in post-conflict societies or democratic societies. So we will be working, protecting, and preventing many of these issues, protecting women, but particularly empowering them, because I believe women have to have the capacity of developing all their potential. As the United Nations Secretary General said at our formal launch in February, and you saw part of the film, supporting faster progress for women is not only morally right, it makes good political and economic sense. And I always say it in my way, in my words, to work for gender equality and women's empowerment is not only the right thing to do, but it's also the smartest thing to do. And this holds true whether we are talking about countries or companies. The World Economic Forum, which tracks performance on gender equality measures in 135 countries, 34 countries, reports a clear correlation between progress on gender equality and GDP per capita. And a recent study found that Fortune 500 companies with the highest number of women on their boards were 53% more profitable than those with the fewest women board members. It's incredible that all the evidence show how much the world gains having more women, but still we have a long way to go. But you know, this makes sense in the sense of what women can contribute to a society, to a country, or to any different place. Because it's all so clear how difficult the situation for women are worldwide, but on the other hand, it's so clear that when women have access to secondary education, to good jobs, to land or other assets, national growth and stability are enhanced, and we see lower maternal mortality, improved child nutrition, greater food security, and less risk of HIV and AIDS. And my own experience has taught me that there's no limit to what women can do. From those who work to support families and do the unpaid caregiving task to those who become campaigners for social change, cabinet ministers, or head of state. If we are to achieve the Millennium Development Goals, we must even do better in tapping into women's strength, women's industry, and women's leadership. And this is not an issue confined to any group of countries or societies. It is a universal issue, and that's why our mandate is universal. Maybe the kind of problems, the proportion of problems can change, but we have to work worldwide to improve gender equality and women's empowerment. We must convince all political actors, including Minister of Finance and Trade. I would like them to be the championings, because they were the ones who ensure budget allocation, that at the end of the day is what really means changing from rhetoric to action. Because usually there are, in some places, we have ministers that are dealing with gender affairs, but not always they have the budget needed in developing countries to those wonderful national action plan transform it into reality. So I said we would like to convince Minister of Finance and Trade, but as well as health and education. And we are talking about rights, but we're also talking about social vitality, political stability, and economic growth. However, UN Women cannot alone do what needs to be done. We will do our part, of course, but that's not enough. We will not replace the good work done by others. Rather, we will harness the full capacity and comparative advantage of each, so that there is even greater impact and faster progress. And when we're talking about that, I'm talking inside the UN system, but also with our stakeholders, with our partners like you. If we are going to be successful as UN women means that we shall all be doing more, not less. In recent months, we have been developing our strategic plan, carrying out consultation with partners in over 100 countries to learn what they expect us to do and what they consider priorities. Because I believe this new entity is a result of many people fighting and struggling for having a new entity in the UN that will, on one hand, express the idea that gender equality and women's empowerment is at the same importance as climate change, as other issues that usually are in the political agenda and the political arena. So we thought it was important when we organize our vision to take into consideration what people think, what their expectations from governments, from parliaments, from civil society, from grassroots organizations. What do they expect from UN Women? And I personally have met with government leaders, members of parliaments, but also civil society networks, to hear how they thought we could contribute value added. In addition to coordinating and leveraging the efforts of others, UN Women will focus on 5 thematic priorities. And it's based in my convincement that if women are not powerful, if not relevant, it's very difficult that their needs and concerns are taken into consideration and have given high priority in the political agenda. Because Jane, the minister, mentioned there's so many needs, so many definitions, and usually very little resources. So I believe we need to empower women. In any area, if women are empowered, they will be able to stand up in a better position. So that's why we have thought that it was very important to enhance women's voices, leadership, and political participation. It was mentioned before, only 19% of parliamentarians are female. And you know that 15 years ago, Beijing Platform of Action mentioned that in terms of really ensuring that legislation will really reflect women's needs and concerns, we need at least 30% of female parliamentarians. Only 26 countries in the world have achieved this goal. On those 26, only 5 did not need a quota or an affirmative action to get there. And that means, and when we're talking about 19%, we're talking on a huge range from 56%, the highest proportion in Rwanda, 44% in South Africa, but 0% in Papua New Guinea, for example. So, and many in less than 10%. So we still have a long way to go, and we are very far away from the 30%. And we're much more than 50% in many places, 50, 53, 52%. So we need to do that. Only 19 head of states or head of governments are female of the 192 member states, so less than 10%. Only 5% of ministers are female, or a great number of ministers all over the world. So we have a lot more to do. We do have a lot of women at the social levels, at the community, as community leaders, as social organizers, as grassroots organizations, thousands of thousands, millions of women, but not enough in decision-making position. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to strengthen the capacity of women as local leaders. Why not in trade unions, of course at the local government and elsewhere. Second big challenge and priority, ending violence against women. And we'll continue working on that. But you know what? We need more men on our side, too. We need them to champion on that. Women will always be there, but we need more men always to work side by side with us in fighting violence against women. And violence against women for us is a very wide range of situations, from domestic violence, of course. And the developed world has costed, you mentioned, Jane, $5.66 million in the US. That's an old estimate, but still the last that we have. The UK in Home Office speaks about 36 billion pounds in domestic violence cost every year. Australia just launched last year a study and said domestic violence costs there in terms of physical care, health care, mental health care, loss of productivity, and so on, a huge amount, 13.6 Australian dollars in terms of cost, economic and of course social cost, and so on. Canada is like, with a smaller population, is like 1.6 or 1.7 billion Canadian dollars. So it is it's the most pervasive violation of human rights, but on the other hand, it also had a very wide social and economic consequences. But we need also to be able to strengthen the presence of female women in countries with conflict or post-conflict. I mean, not only because we need them to be at the peace talks, in terms of that when there are peace agreements, women's concerns are really taken into consideration. it has been mentioned here, numbers of rapes. And rapes seen as a means of war. And really what happens in many places, and we have studies that in 536 peace agreements, only in 16 of them, the word women was mentioned. And only in 8 of them, the word sexual violence was mentioned. And only in 6 ceasefire agreements, the concept that rape was a violation of the ceasefire agreement, only in 6 of them. So it is a very complicated issue. But if we look at women as victims in conflict and post-conflict, and that their needs and concerns not sufficiently taken into consideration, we also are losing, if we don't give women a very more important place, the incredible contribution that women can play. And I was looking at Eleanor Roosevelt, speaking at the General Assembly there during probably one of the first assemblies, probably when the Declaration of Human Rights was signed by the member states. And she said, and that year, I mean, I don't remember if 1946 or 1948 exactly, she said that women should, as they were in war, should have a very important presence in peace building. And we still are very far away on that. So we are going to develop more programs in terms of strengthening women's capacities as negotiators, as mediators, and strengthening women's organization too, in terms of ensuring that women can have a more important contribution to the peace building processes. But of course, if women don't have economic autonomy, it's very difficult to have equal rights. So we are going to work strongly on ensuring economic empowering of women. I just came from Istanbul. We were in the 4th conference of least developed countries, 48 countries, 33 in Africa, 1 in Latin America, Haiti, and the rest in the Asia-Pacific area. And when you see that, and you see that essentially agriculture is the most important productive activity, and when you see that in countries in Africa like Tanzania and others, 85% of the agricultural labor force are women. I mean, but on the other hand, they own only 10% of the assets and only 2% of the land, of the property rights. I mean, we can't do much more because they are the drivers of economy on those places. And if we support them in terms of water supplies, in terms of storage capacity, in terms of technical transfer so they can add value to what they're doing, we know, and it was mentioned, that when women had incomes, 90% of their income, 90, is given to the family. It ensures food security, nutrition. Child can buy, they can buy text for books for the schools and so on. I don't want to embarrass any men here, but the same research, it's not my fault, the research, shows that 30 or 40% of the income the man gives to the family. So, and when we talk of migrants, the same happens with remittances, and so the majority. So women are essential, not only, first because they take care of the family, they ensure food and access to education as possible, but on the other hand, they're essential in the economy. And if we provide them with more support, with more capacity, they will be doing much more things. And we have done that. We have worked in Liberia, for example, with women who are developing trade. The problem is they're not in the formal trade sector, we're in the informal. But we need to bring them from the informal to the informal. But since we do that, we improve their capacity. We improve their capacity of storage. We improve their capacity of negotiation, how to deal with customs, how to work in that, because many of them are cross-border traders. So there's lots of things that can be done that really can mean a difference, that really can mean a difference in terms of the economy of the country, and their own economic situation, then much more has to be done. But of course, not only in Africa. If we weren't talking about economic empowerment, we're thinking on how we ensure women's workers dignified work with adequate labor conditions, and hopefully good salaries, and hopefully in many places at equal job, equal pay, men and women. Well, SMEs, we have thousands of women with so many experience in Peru, in other places where we have improved women's capacity in terms of entrepreneurship. But also CEOs, we're still very far away on CEOs. In the US, only 3% of CEOs are females. And So it's a huge range of alternatives. It's not only developing world. We also have to improve in the developed world how we deal with all these issues. And finally, of course, we need to ensure, we need to work building capacity, national capacity, because we need these changes to be sustainable. So we will be working with countries in terms that gender priorities are reflected in national planning, national budgeting, and for many places also in giving them access to have the capacity of having systems that will be developing statistic, gender disaggregated. Because how can we know if we are improving if we have only a figure that includes men and women on that? So we're working on that. And you could ask yourself, but what about education? It's essential, and I do believe it's essential. Health, I'm a medical doctor, so for me health is essential. Migration, and so on. We are going to be working in all those areas, but we're not the leading agencies because we have WHO, UNAIDS, UNFPA, so we will be building partnership with them, or UNESCO in the case of education. So we will be building partnership. We're building a task force. For example, with UNICEF, in terms of violence against women, they had safe cities for children. We had safe cities for women. We're going to have safe cities for women and children. We try to be more effective and to produce synergies between us. So that's the way we want to work. What we want to offer is a new dynamic to a global dialogue on gender equality and bring new energy, drawing on multiple talents and bringing together men and women from different countries and communities in a shared endeavor. UN Women will mobilize support for work on gender equality as a whole, including our UN partners. And critical to our ability to do this and to provide a strategic and sustainable support to countries is the availability and reliability of financial resources. In the past 4 months, we have stepped up our outreach and resource mobilization efforts, relying on long-standing partnership with UN members and national committees, and developing new partnerships with foundations and corporations that share our vision for change. And we do recognize the importance of the UK National Committee in facilitating this new partnership, as well as its commitment to working with government to build on its long-standing support for UN Women and increase its contribution. So I want to thank you very much for this important role that is critical, clearly, continuing to engage government and the UK public at large, and reminding them of the unique chance to make real progress on gender equality and a better world for everyone.
Thank you, Michelle, for your inspirational speech. We are so extremely fortunate to have someone with your vision, coupled with your very practical approach to all these issues and to planning UN Women and its path to the future. We're sure that with your energy and support, the aims of UN Women to see equality for women and girls throughout the world as a basic human right will be realized. We are a group of driven and enthusiastic men and women who want to help to bring about real change, both at home and abroad. We are keen to work with like-minded organizations to achieve our common goals. We have members, patrons, and supporters who join us in helping the development of UN Women. We support the work of UN Women in its mission for gender equality and the empowerment of women, and we do this through our innovative education project, which we take out to schools, and awareness building through conferences on a wide range of topics, from violence against women to women in leadership, through lobbying the government to continue funding for UN Women, and raising funds which go directly to help ensure ongoing project activity. What attracted me in the first place to working with UN Women is that the work is about bringing long-term strategic change, change that will improve the rights of women and girls, their life opportunities, and the impact their contributions will make on their own families, their societies, and their countries. Currently, we in the UK support 3 economic empowerment projects in Kenya, Liberia, and Peru, which Michelle touched on, which enable small groups of entrepreneurial women to learn to work cooperatively in making and distributing their own products. These women are then able to afford to send their children to school and to see for the first time the opportunity for a decent future. The other fund which we support is the Trust Fund for the Eradication of Violence Against Women. Violence against women, has been mentioned, is a global pandemic, with 1 in 4 women likely to suffer violence in their lifetime, and in the UK, 2 women are murdered every week in violent situations. The Trust Fund enables innovative projects which bring understanding and relief to women and girls who are the main sufferers, particularly in a war situation. Last year, I was fortunate to visit some UN projects in Kosovo. I met one woman who facilitates a network of women from Serbia, Albania, and Kosovo, ensuring that contact is maintained between them during the time of conflict, sometimes at great personal danger. She is one example of a courageous woman who is determined that the women will unite in bringing peace and reconciliation to their lands. So what of the future and our new role supporting UN women? To do even more to help, we need to achieve a sustainable funded organisation in the UK, to ensure that UN Women has sufficient funds to achieve its vision and plan, and to promote awareness of UN Women across the UK. I was able to quote at a conference recently a CEO of one of the global companies who said that the economic force now and for the future is women. That all companies who wish to succeed in the future must have women in positions of equal power within their organizations. Similarly, as you've mentioned, countries who empower women will see a safer, more democratic society and economically active country. We hope to work with many of you over the coming years, and that you will feel that you can help in the work of UN Women. After all, this is not a women's issue. It is a human issue, and it is a human rights issue. Now we move on to the last part of our event, which is to talk to you about our new campaign that is being launched in the UK tonight. And it is part of our awareness building activity and is called Raise Your Voice for Change. This campaign is aimed at delivering our key aims of equality, empowerment, and freedom as basic human rights by inviting people to lift their voices and become more involved in our work. As part of that campaign, we have commissioned a song which will be heard for the first time tonight. The song expresses all the hopes of UN Women and calls on people to join us to raise your voice for change. Tonight, the song will be sung by the Instant Teamwork Harmony Band, conducted by David Lawrence, and following this first live performance, the song will be launched all over the country. We will invite people to join the campaign in an open and engaging way by literally raising voices for change. Across the country, individuals, groups, choirs, schools, corporations will be asked to join by singing the song, recording their endeavours, and sharing their efforts through various social media platforms. In year 2, we are looking to encourage honest debate about the issues affecting men and women, girls and boys, in order to bring about change where needed. And we are hoping to do this through the big debate. And in year 3, we plan to further spread support for the aims and objectives of UN Women and its impact through the big link, linking people, programs, activities, and organizations. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dawn Ellis, Tom Morley, David Lawrence, and the Instant Teamwork Harmony Band, and Raise Your Voice for Change.